Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. And as was rightfully introduced, today I will talk a little bit about what we can do, how we can use these decentralized technologies to bring innovations into capital markets, and why we need to do that as well. So, first of all, why we need to build these bridges. Well, we live in a very unique time. We live in very difficult times as well. We are witnessing technology at the same time empowering people and creating a lot of new opportunities and equality. But at the same time, technology is also used as a tool to oppress, to remove freedoms, to control information. So we can see that every day. Like we have the national currencies that are widely fluctuating, inflation at its all-time high. We have a situation where Bitcoin, this great innovation came out. It allows people to take back control of their financial lives. But then we are still linked to the old system. We are still linked to banks that maybe don't allow us to jump into this train. They create obstacles. They purposely keep people away from this. We have cases also on the security markets. For example, there was the clear example of the GameStop case. The GameStop case, there was people coordinating, creating an effort to achieve something, and then when that went out of the path that was designed for them, they just stopped and said, you cannot do that anymore. This is not an open market, this is not a free market. You cannot go in that direction. In the same way, we see that with information at large. So we are seeing censorship of information, selectively deciding which is the narrative that has to be followed. We see a continuous attack to what is the right to privacy. So we see both at the European level and in the US, we see attacks towards encryption. So we don't want encryption to be something that everyone can use. We want encryption to be something that can be broken by the government if there is a right motive to do so. So this is a very peculiar time. Technology is growing. People are getting empowered by these new technologies. But at the same time, there is a strong counter-reaction to this. There is a strong movement that is actually saying technology is not necessarily for everyone. We want to limitate how much this can be done. And this is done under a guise of different motives. So, of course, it can be over the financial warfare, so to speak. So I don't want certain countries, certain region to prosper because I want to keep control over these environments. It can be under the guise of course, security, creating this false dichotomy between security and between safety and freedom. Like you cannot be free to do whatever you want. You can have privacy, because then there will be a risk for everyone. Bad actors will abuse this, and it will be something bad for everyone. So how to move from this state, which is very fragile? We have the power, we have the tools, but at the same time, there is a very strong contrast going on. So what is happening today is that there are mainly two approaches to this, two main school of thought, so to speak. So from one side, we see what is the capital markets of internet. So in this case, we see the legacy financial system that is jumping into these new technologies, but it is doing so in a very peculiar way. Like we want to keep our system, we want to keep control. So we are innovating because we want to show that we are innovating. We want to give the impression that we are in on these new technologies, but we are not. So we really want to have all the flair of this decentralized economy that is being built, but we don't want to lose control. So this quote is actually from JP Morgan, which said that the application of the 5 protocols to tokenize real-world assets combined with the appropriate safeguard to ensure financial integrity. We see from the language, regulatory compliance, customer protection, we see again that we are going to this rhetoric where, okay, this new technology is very interesting. We see the power of it. But at the same time, we don't want to give away our position because you need us. You need us to provide you the integrity. You need us to provide the compliance. You need us to provide protection to the investors. And this is happening across different scenarios, and we see that a lot outside of the Bitcoin space specifically, where there are these DeFi protocols, and they're being curbed, they're being modified, they're being pushed by regulators in directions that basically say, yes, you will keep your decentralization in name only. It will be just a theater. You won't be free to do things. You will just be, we will just be an intermediary, but just behind the curtains. So that's the big problem here, because then you still keep the problem of trust. You still trust in these intermediaries. The intermediaries are still there. It's just less apparent and potentially even more treacherous, because then you are not aware of those intermediaries, but they're still there. There was the example of Uniswap on Ethereum that was very clear. Like, they've been approached by regulators. They said, this and that asset, those are securities. So take them down. These so-called decentralized protocols that they were told to basically stop the swaps. And then how can you stop a swap? If it's a peer-to-peer swap, you're not supposed to even be a part of it. And if they comply to these requests, then they are admitting, in fact, that they are not really peer-to-peer protocols. They're just companies with extra steps. But there is another way. The other way is the one focused on bringing true decentralization to financial markets. And, well, of course, we have Bitcoin, which sits as a perfect first step in that direction, like something that is not possible to replicate, something that had a very slow growth, which is not something that could happen again today. So people came into Bitcoin slowly, then the distribution is very good. The technology is sound. You have no central actor, and we always go back to this concept. You don't have central actors. You don't have someone which is benefit from every single transaction on Bitcoin. You don't have anyone behind the curtains. So what we can do is think about this approach, the Bitcoin approach, and bring that to financial services, how we can leverage that to bring this innovation. So, for example, in the case of securities, there is a very strong case that everybody says securities, you have compliance. You have to comply with the laws because securities are too interlinked with traditional, the regulator, the security regulation is a nightmare across different jurisdictions, very difficult to navigate, very fragmented market, very big barrier for small players to jump in, both in terms of operating platforms, but also as raising capital. I mean, for a startup, it's easier to have an angel investor than it is to issue securities for their equities. It's much easier. So how can we help this? We can help this, for example, by first step, we need to have a way of exchanging peer-to-peer. And we have a way of preserve self-custody. If you don't have that, then anything else is pointless. If you have some securities, digitalized securities, and you're trading them only on centralized platforms, it's just a database, a more complex way of managing a database entry. You still have your point of trust. You're not back in control. If we start from having the ability to trade those assets peer-to-peer, if you start from the ability of having possessions, owning those assets fully, then we can get back to this true innovation. One of the steps we took with 7 Labs was, the first step was to develop a peer-to-peer exchange protocol. And we believe that is key, because without that, without true decentralization, and is a protocol, it is not a smart contract, for example. Because FATF was very, very clear on these distinctions. So we had years where you can trade peer-to-peer with smart contracts and the likes, but that is coming to an end progressively, because they're starting to understand that being an intermediary doesn't necessarily mean that you are intervening in every single trade. It means that you are somehow involved in the trade. It's not like because you're matching on your database, you are an intermediary. If you run a smart contract, if you can change the rules, if you have some tokens that you're gaining from, then you are a part of that trade. So the regulation is catching up to all these things. And it could be a good thing, because then we start to create a difference between what is decentralization theater and what can actually be true innovation. In terms of securities, you have extra difficulties that are, in our case, we focused a lot on the Liquid sidechain. Liquid is a Bitcoin sidechain, so it's pegged to the Bitcoin network. And the great things about that is that you keep some of the original structure. For example, you have the asset issuer is responsible for the AML and KYC obligation that are what is required today. But at the same time, once you have that, then you can trade those assets in a peer-to-peer fashion. And by doing that, you are really changing how things work. You are not just replicating the current system. You are streamlining it. You are reducing the burdens for platforms that want to get into the market. And you are, most of all, reducing the costs and the complexity for people that want to benefit from it, people that want to raise funds through these methods. So there is the possibility to have this kind of innovation. And that opens up a very big point. The point is, Bitcoin itself, it is quite a complex thing. Why will people decide to trade a decentralized asset on a centralized platform? Why will people decide to actually have intermediaries to deal with something that is designed to eliminate them? And this, I think, can be explained by the differences in approaches. So it is possible. I see that Bitcoin, if you take Bitcoin as a whole, it's like a lifeboat. It is a lifeboat because you have to target people at the intersection between the people that have the technical knowledge to understand why Bitcoin is relevant and people that have the need for it, people that understand why it is needed from an economical point of view. So these people that understand both these things, they can truly enjoy the benefit of Bitcoin. They can truly benefit from the decentralized nature. They can appreciate why they need to custody their own Bitcoin. They understand these things. But this is for very few people, let's be honest. We are talking worldwide is an incredibly small percentage. Most people, they either don't get why they need Bitcoin, if they live in a very comfortable situation, if they may just not realize why they need it. Other people may have problem of trust because I don't understand how it works. I don't understand how the traditional financial system works, but then there are governments, there are banks, there is many years of track records, and I trust that because everyone did, so why should I change something? So is it enough to have a lifeboat? Is it really necessary to have something that is so difficult to understand somehow for the majority of people? I think there is another approach to this. The other approach is that why don't we start from the legacy systems? Why don't we start from people that not necessarily are interested in Bitcoin today, but they are interested in accessing banking. They are interested in having the ability to manage digital cash. For them, it can be just that. And if we start from the legacy system and we build on top of that, we have a significant advantage, and that is that you don't need to understand necessarily everything to trust them. You can leverage these metrics of trust that the legacy system has, because it has track records, it has a long history. So, and the number of people that can be reached by doing this is incredibly larger than what can be reached by trying to create a contact between the technology and push that on the legacy system, because that will mean they will need to change their processes, they will need to change their approach, and in the end, they feel like you are basically asking their help to eliminate them from the process. So why would I support that? I mean, why will I help you eliminate me from the process? I'm very happy where I am, in a very strong position. So the idea is we start from a traditional system, legacy system. And what can we add on top of that? A clear example is that if you think about the use case of an exchange, if you think of an exchange, a centralized exchange has huge expenses. They have to manage expenses in terms of protecting from external attacks. They have a huge infrastructure requirement that are always changing. So they always have to keep up with the changes in the technology. They always have to be ready for attacks. They have issues with the regulators as well, because the regulation is always one step behind. But when the regulation catches up, you need to comply with that. So if you bring the concept of decentralization there, you can have very strong points, because they say you're not to be cut out from the process. You will serve as the entry point to this new distributed trading. And if you are the entry point, you keep your position, but you lose the control. Because basically, the users can rely to you for converting fiat currency. We have to go through you for converting fiat currencies into Bitcoin, for example, and vice versa. But if then the trading and all the different operations that happens, including even more advanced things like securities, if then that is done in a decentralized way, you don't have to rely anymore on your infrastructure. You don't have these extra expenses. You don't have to provide for security, because those are publicly audited protocols. Many people are interacting with it and keeping track on what is happening. You don't have to be responsible of policing the networks. This is very important, because financial institution, we try to think of them as they're the bad guys, because they are the one that ask me where my $500 came from. I don't like that. Truth is that the current ecosystem asks them to do this, to enforce these policies, because they have control. So if you have control, if you can stop a transaction from happening, you become responsible for it. If you are facilitating directly a transaction, is your role to actually say, I need to identify you, I need to run my anti-money laundering checks, because I am responsible, because I'm part of this. If you have only ramp on and ramp off, and then all the trading, all the other operations are peer-to-peer, then you have, in our system, you don't even have visibility of what is happening. Then your role changes, because you're now just doing some very basic operations. And going back to the concept of the barrier of entry, you don't need to be a bank. You just need some basic licensing, because then you can exchange these currencies and people can come in. And then you don't need to perform payments, because payments are done digitally. And then you don't need to supervise exchanges, because exchanges are done in a peer-to-peer fashion. You don't even see what is happening on the protocol. So the roles are still there, but the power shifts. And it's not just taking away power from the legacy system, it's also taking away responsibilities from them. So this is a very interesting angle, I think, and it is a very important concept, because it will allow this message to go through and not find obstruction, like we are not here to replace you. We are here to give you a different role. You will keep your role, but we will take away your burdens as well. So this is an important thing, and this is not a lifeboat anymore. This becomes a bridge, because everyone is on that side now. Even if the community is growing at a steady pace, every year we see more people getting close to these technologies, we have a bridge. We have the ability here to bring everyone that is currently on the legacy system, which is basically all the world, and bring them to this technology. have an entry point that will allow them to actually benefit from the Bitcoin itself, understanding step by step, by providing them something which is useful for them today. And the risk profile for third world countries, for example, this is incredible, because currently the risk profile of a lot of users worldwide is not, in the potential of benefiting from providing services is not enough for banks to take them on as customers. But if we simplify the role of the banks, and then everything else then based on these decentralized systems, then that becomes very powerful, because you don't have that barrier anymore. And of course, they want to bring in more people in that case. So this is basically the idea of how to bring, now to connect those markets with the digital world. And luckily enough, we do also have some active implementation of these things. So we built this, for example, the TDEX protocol. The idea is to use that and to integrate that into different commercial applications to start leveraging this aspect. And we have very good use case here in Switzerland, and that will be public soon. And it will be possible to start and see these things in action. And another important thing is interoperability, meaning that because it is not a company, it is a protocol, everything is open source, everything is available. We start from the Bitcoin mindset. So everything is open source, everything is available. We want people to use these protocols to build something that we cannot think of today. And everyone that uses it, being compatible with the other applications, will definitely cause a bigger network effect, which is one of the main things that is difficult to achieve. Like, you don't have enough people trading in peer-to-peer, and you see, I want better price, I want a centralized market because it has paper money on it, and it can have bigger volumes if I need to. But having a protocol that does that, we think is a very important step in the right direction. So I want to take just a moment to say thanks to Simona, which is my associate. She was supposed to have this keynote today. Unfortunately, she was unable to be here, but I've presented her content at my best. I hope that that was a nice presentation. Thank you very much.